All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everybody that is joining us today for our webinar on leveraging technology to create a true digital twin. We are very grateful to have Insparisk hosting our webinar for us today and bringing their knowledge and professionalism to our client base. I'll give you a quick background on Insparisk. They are a technology-enabling risk management firm that performs asset inventorying and tagging, equipment inspections, and overall site condition assessments for the facility management market. They were founded in 1992 and have evolved as a premier commercial risk management company through skilled inspection professionals and by leveraging their field-based state-of-the-art digital data capture technology using their own proprietary software. So we are excited to have them here. Net Facilities partnered with Insparisk back in October of last year. We were excited to form the relationship with them. They're a valued partner of ours and are able to assist our net clients with both the collection and the importing of their inspection data into our CMMS solutions. So we're grateful to have their knowledge and expertise as a valued partner of Net Facilities, and to be able to have them here today to bring you guys some good information related to the industry today. So we'll move on to just a few quick housekeeping items related to today's webinar. We are going to be, all the lines should be muted, so we're going to ask that any questions that you have, just simply put those either in the chat section for the Q&A, and we will be sure to cover all questions at the end of this, just to keep the flow going. Let you know who's here with us today. From Insparisk, we have Stephen Kleva. He is an innovative facilities management professional with more than 15 years dealing with asset assessments, planning, and long-term solutions for managing multiple sites of varying degrees. He's primarily helping clients implement solutions to better understand, track, and predict their future facility needs. And Devang Shah is an innovative and solutions-oriented software professional with more than 15 years of progressive experience developing, implementing, and supporting complex high-performance infrastructures across various industries. So we are grateful to have both of you here with us today to talk with us about creating a true digital twin. So I'll hand it over to Stephen now, and we'll come back, circle back in at the end with some questions.
Great. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Kelly, for having us today, and we're grateful to be here to share a little bit of information about a digital twin. Especially these days, technology is playing a larger role in all of our lives, given all the different circumstances occurring. And a digital twin is something that has been around for quite some time, and people have tried to sort of obtain the goal of having a digital twin. And a lot of the technology now is sort of meeting the need. It's coming to fruition, and the ability is there to actually see it through. So with this presentation, we're hoping to describe to you, what is a digital twin? How can it be leveraged for facilities management, property owners? What can you do with that digital twin of both, the assets at your location as well as all of your locations? What is the return on investment of implementing a digital twin? And then finally, to be fair, looking at both the pros and the cons of a digital twin. And part of the picture here is that, if you use a simple CMS platform, you've already begun to implement the digital twin. So what we hope today is to describe some of the other pieces of the puzzle that at some point, hopefully we'll plug together and, we'll bring you that true digital twin. So to start off with, what is a digital twin? So a digital twin acts as a bridge between the physical world and the virtual one. So basically taking your locations, taking their infrastructure, taking their the assets at that location, and then putting it into a usable format electronically. Being able to see your asset registry, understand, what type of infrastructure you have, being able to call for work orders, for maintenance, for replacement, being able to understand, what is the history of the equipment? How many times has it been serviced? Has it been serviced too much? And once you have your infrastructure, your equipment in an electronic format, much more easier to start to look at analytics like that and really use it to make smart decisions. IoT devices are a newer item in the digital twin space, and they are basically devices that connect to the internet. They feed information, directly from your equipment or from environmental conditions. So, believe it or not, it could be a simple temperature checker on a refrigeration system. It could be something that's looking at the outside of the building. It could even be video cameras that provide you that feed of live information so you can understand what's going on. And with technology, obviously, that's getting better and better. There are, vibration devices that you can attach to a piece of equipment, and with those vibrations, kind of understand what's going on with the device, seeing if it can predict failures and things of that nature. So IoT devices are certainly something that's new, and now I think with where they're going, the price point is getting really well, where you can implement something quite easily. And with those devices on there, you can automatically call for service, or you can automatically put a notation and a warning. So, and these are things that exist in a personal space. If you have a Nest thermostat at your house, it might tell you when the temperature drops to a certain temperature and warn you and say that you need to heat the space. And so that's certainly something that's been implemented recently in the market. 3D visualizations are definitely the newest form. And we've seen this, come to light now, given all the circumstances of the pandemic, where individuals want to be able to see a space, but not necessarily be present, or maybe they can't be present, or they might need, many parties to walk through a space. So there are many different platforms, Matterport being one of the more commercially acceptable ones that are being used, creating a 3D space, allowing you to walk through it. And certainly then giving you that, quote unquote, true digital twin image. And then finally, the asset history, the repairs, the maintenance over time, taking information from maintenance companies, putting it into your CMS platform or into some other system that can digest that and ultimately give you the history. And with that history, then you can get a very thorough understanding of the equipment that you have in your space. Okay. Devon, you want to go ahead and talk about the technology?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So, yeah, I'm just going to go a little bit deeper into what Stephen touched upon in the first slide. So basically here, we're going to talk about what can be done with a digital twin. And I personally feel like, the possibilities are endless, but, we only have so much time. So, we'll just go through what we think are some of the key ways you can utilize a digital twin. And when you think about it, a digital twin can be something simple as like an Excel spreadsheet, right? So you have this, it's just data, and whether you store the data in a Excel spreadsheet or some other database, it's how you basically utilize that data. And now, one of the really explosive, industries or realms is IoT. Everything is about IoT nowadays, things in the home, whether it's through, working with Siri or some other, technology, being able to monitor anything you have in your house, I think is huge, and from a commercial standpoint, when you are monitoring or responsible for, many various buildings or even just one building, there's so many things that can go wrong. And now with the emergence of IoT, it really helps us take a more of a proactive approach, rather than being reactive, when after things happen. Um, so within IoT, you have various sensors nowadays. You can basically, it'll help you monitor anything you can possibly think about. Some things being like the temperature, whether it's something's too cold or too hot, it'll just measure temperature. And you can, through the use of certain software, you can basically set thresholds to, do something when it meets a certain threshold. So we have things like temperature, we have things like moisture. Let's say it detects water. There's a leak in the building somewhere. That can kick off something to stop the main water that's coming into the building, to help you with that. So it's really, that's one way of having a digital twin, with these, different devices collecting all this information and just, storing that data somewhere. And then you being able to visually, like take this data and make use of it, I think is huge. So it'll basically help you with, having better equipment efficiency, and knowing when a piece of equipment, or really anything that could malfunction, has malfunctioned, but even more important, it's going to malfunction. And I think that's the key, being able to react to something, to an event before it actually happens. It'll save you, obviously lots of money on repair costs and maintenance. So, that's one way of having a digital twin, is through the use of these sensors in the IoT space. And then something else Stephen touched upon is, various tools that'll help you take a 3D layout of a building or a room. Now, even with the latest iPhones, there's software out there that you can, take a snapshot of, just move your phone around the room. It'll basically map out everything in the room, which is, I think, in my opinion, awesome. And those kind of capabilities uh, you know, could be used in so many different ways. You send out a technician one time to take a digital footprint of a piece of building, room, floor by floor, room by room, and then you're done. You don't have to physically go back to that space ever again. It'll save you time on, just travel costs, just, personal time, which is always huge, right? Because there's never enough of time nowadays. So it'll give you the capabilities of, like, being able to have a digital walkthrough. And, for instance, in the realties, with realtors, just, 3D walkthroughs of different houses they're looking to sell. And I think those kind of technologies are being utilized more so today, with, what's going on in the world with the pandemic and social distancing. And, having capability of being able to have that digital 3D visualization of a building will also help you to, now with the vaccine out, thank God, and hopefully, one day soon, the workforce being able to go back to the workplace, these type of tools can help companies sort of map out where, how, in a given space, where the furniture has to, where can it fit to abide by social distancing, rules that are, currently in place. And, that Matterport software that Stephen touched upon, it's, very cost effective, and it gives you the ability to have a virtual walkthrough, not only in the browser, but also using something like 3D virtual reality goggles, which I think is really cool. So, that's really another way to have a digital footprint, so you can have a digital footprint with data being collected, and then using some piece of software to help you, make sense of that data. Or you can have a digital footprint with 3D digital, basically a 3D digital footprint. And to me, that's like what I used to see in like these old sci-fi movies and things in the future. Now it's, it's here. And, to me, that's just very cool to be able to, be living in a time where we have tools like this. Um, it sort of, just makes life easier, helps us to make smarter decisions, and just move forward, to be better. Um, and, all that sort of ties into infrastructure information. Not only now, all this data is being collected, and then now you have AI software that can help make sense of this data over time. And, what I said before is, instead of reacting to something after it happens, what's key is reacting to something before it's going to happen. So with all this information, with AI, you can help better understand, when, let's say, for instance, knowing that, you know what, we've inspected all these buildings, we have information at all these, let's say, refrigerators. And this particular model, we know that it's going to fail after X amount of years or something else. So knowing that, we can make a smart decision saying, you know what, I have the same make and model refrigerator at some other location. It's coming upon X amount of years. Let me do something about it before. That's just one example. So I mean, the possibilities are endless. It can also help you make smarter, decisions on capital planning. So that'll save you time and money in that respect. And then, what I was saying before, it's predictive maintenance. You can predict when things are going to happen. And I think that's just, things of the future, right? Being able to predict when something's going to happen and basically reacting to it before it happens. I know I wish I could know a lot of things happened before they did. And, like the lottery, I'd be a very rich man. But, just touching upon that, I think, these are some of the things that can, with the digital twin, what we can do, and, how we can make use of that data.
Great. Thanks, Devon.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, so now to go, and then once you say, okay, well, a couple of these ideas are great to be able to implement, whether it's a 3D visualization, a CMMS platform, or if you want to even look at how can I take that data from other external sources and run AI against it and algorithms. You want to know what is the return on your investment and how the efficiency and planning that you do on a daily basis can be improved by implementing these pieces. So as Devon had mentioned, predictive maintenance is a big piece when you start to implement a digital twin. You start to learn things that you didn't know before, understanding equipment that may be at a place where you need to replace it, understanding what does it look like out in the field, what does the location look like, how am I sending service techs to address equipment issues, and all of that obviously can be captured in a CMMS platform as well as in some type of virtualization of the space to be able to provide direction. And then obviously the real-time data for planning, feeding in that information, understanding that the temperature is going too high and there's a risk of something going wrong with the compressor on the refrigeration system. These are things that can automatically call work orders and can help you to better manage your site. So obviously understanding the breakdown history allows for future capital planning. So if you take a device and understand that it has had a lot of maintenance done on it recently, you could look at opportunities for replacement. So when you are capital planning, you can think about, there's something that may not need replacement right now, but may need replacement in the future. And due to that, rather than spend the money being reactive in the future, where it will obviously cost more in an emergency situation, and you may have a longer downtime, and that may ultimately affect, your revenue stream, you might look to say, okay, let's replace, 10 of the 20 units in year 2 or 3. You can receive better pricing on the devices, and you can obviously be in a position where you won't, have equipment go down and then unfortunately lose revenue. And finally, the 3D visualizations, they allow you to have multiple trades at a site. And we're about to look at 2 different case studies that we utilized with this, and specifically for 3D visualizations, where we allowed multiple skilled trades to come to a site, limited the travel costs, and then ultimately use that space to be able to revisit the location over and over again, make decisions, do augmented reality, place desks, place different pieces of equipment in certain circumstances. So to better learn about the return on investment, I've picked 2 case studies where I believe it kind of shows, hey, these are 2 ways in which a part of a digital twin was implemented and basically what it did to pay off. So in the first example, we had a client who was looking at many pre-lease locations. And so the client wanted to understand the potential of the space. Either they were acquiring the space empty, they were acquiring a business in the space, and in that acquisition, they may need to combine other employees into that location. They may want to reorganize the space. So what we did there was we implemented the Matterport technology. We went out and did these 3D mappings of the location, and then we made those mappings available to them. Those mappings were able to obviously be walked through by those multiple trades that would normally fly in on an airplane, but now could walk through it visually. Measurements could be taken all within the 3D space, and they're accurate to about 1/2 inch. And so they were able then to take those measurements, revisit the space multiple times, pull floor plan drawings from the 3D imaging that we did, as well as the ability to then take that, turn that into reflective ceiling plans, turn that into CAD drawings, to then be able to perform architectural functions on it, and ultimately draft up plans for any type of adjustments that were going to go on at the space. So in this case, it wasn't a full digital twin that they implemented, it was a partial. And in all cases, no one is ever going to implement 100% of a digital twin. Over time, you certainly will, and it takes some time, as we'll talk about that, but it takes time to implement that, and ultimately you do each piece sort of in steps. And so this was a step that they took, and this made them stronger because they were able to limit the cost of the individuals that needed to go to the space. They were able to limit the costs by having both the 3D imaging done, the ability to get the floor plans, the ability to get the CAD drawing, rather than have multiple parties provide those pieces of it. And second to that was equipment data collection. So this is the other important aspect, and that's with having enough information about your assets, about your location. So as good as having a visualization of it, you want to have the visualization with the actual equipment data, understanding what you have at the location. So in this case, we had a retail client who has 300 plus locations across the United States. Wanted to have a better understanding of what they had at that location and the condition of it. So their existing inventory was poor at best, and there was a lot of ghost assets where things showed up twice. And so work orders that may have been pulled weren't necessarily being applied to the right pieces of equipment. So then that gets to the point about the history and what you could do with that. And so obviously to be able to utilize that, you have to have some firm foundation. And so what they said was, okay, how can you help us do this? And so with their new CMS platform that they were implementing, we did a data collection exercise where we went out and basically grabbed all of their pertinent pieces of equipment that made sense for the exercise and the current condition. And we put that together, analyzed it, and delivered them a property health report across their entire portfolio. Now, not only did that one-time view help them get an understanding of what they have and where they're going with what they have, it was able to give them a foundation to work off of. So now they can take that initial investment and update it on a recurring basis and keep their asset inventory up to date. One of the largest challenges that we see with this client and with many clients is there's always an age or condition of their current asset inventory that's not great. It's not kept up to date. It's poor applied when maintenance is done. And because of that, you really lose sight on what you have. So this is really a foundational aspect of a digital twin. And this is where most folks are in some way. And yes, at some point it was with a spreadsheet. Now it's with a CMMS platform or an EAM platform. But ultimately, the client was able to implement a recurring process here where on a biannual basis, they go back and they sort of reinventory condition, and they utilize this to understand the health, to do smart capital planning, and to make decisions for the future without, again, having to be reactive, having to get that phone call where something has gone down and now they need to be reactive. The costs obviously climb, and with the costs that climb, so do the work that surrounds it. So this is another example where the return is there. You work on getting the foundation that will ultimately help you to continue to build that digital twin to the point where you do have an exact replica of what you have in the field. And when you're managing hundreds of locations and you have that view, then obviously it makes things far easier. So now to talk about the pros and the cons. So to be fair, obviously there are cons just like there are pros. And while we're trying to tell you both what a digital twin is and say that this is the great future and where we're headed, there are obviously some things that you have to factor in when figuring out whether you want to implement a digital twin. So the pros are, obviously electronically organizing your buildings and their infrastructure for easy management, for repair and maintenance. Storing that information through real time and visualization allows you to increase efficiency when dealing with problems and when dealing with the health of your locations. Detecting problems or anomalies more quickly will lead to less downtime, and that can be done once you do have that data, once you have that real time data feed, and once you have history of what's been done in the different pieces of assets, then certainly you can detect problems or anomalies. And so as a quick example, we've seen a circumstance where vibration analysis tags have been applied to units. And when you have 20 of the same rooftop HVAC unit across all of your locations, you can understand through the vibration analysis when the unit clicks on and off and whether or not that jives with the temperature shifts, and then to see how that may affect the useful life of that piece of equipment. And then finally, predictive versus reactive. And so we've talked about this obviously a lot during this presentation, where you want to be predictive. You don't want to be reactive. You want to be able to budget accordingly. You want to be able to make sure that you aren't going to have the downtime, and you want to be as efficient as possible in the workflow of getting it repaired or replaced or whatever the circumstance brings. So having the direct connection, having the ability to pull a work order through your CMMS platform, having the ability to manage the history of that work order that's been pulled to be able to use downstream is what ultimately allows you to be predictive versus reactive. So now to the cons. So there are a couple of cons. So one of them is that the information has to be kept up to date, and you don't want to have to do a lengthy data collection exercise every couple of years and say, okay, now I'm going to have to restart my investment. What you want to try to do is have a solid foundation, understand the equipment you have, get a good inventory of that equipment, and then implement workflow processes that can make sure the history of what occurs with that piece of equipment is kept up to date. So if you implement a CMMS platform, that allows you to basically do that. You're able to put the asset in there and then track all of the work orders, all of the service, all of the requests that go on with that piece of equipment, giving you that history, giving you that capability. However, it does require you to implement a CMMS platform, implement a workflow that's going to make sure that, if there is a work order called, that it's appropriated to the right piece of equipment, and ultimately that you are gaining from the process. And then second to that, obviously ongoing costs. So there's a cost for the CMMS platform. If you do visualization, there's obviously a cost to serve those 3D spaces, so you have constant access. And those can be high in some cases. It depends on how many locations you have, what you're looking to track, and in what fashion you're looking to do it. But what we see is, as much as that's a con, once you have all of that organized, once you're spending the money to make sure they're stored properly, you can make smart decisions that can save money. And you can leverage some of these platforms that have an automated connection to different types of service repair companies that can help you with your issues. So as much as it's a con, it leads back to a pro again, where once you have that, once you spend the investment, then ultimately you're stronger going forward. You have that foundation. And those are the pros and the cons of a digital twin. Great. And so I'd just like to thank everybody for sitting for this presentation, and I look forward to any questions that anyone may have.
Great. Thank you so much, both Stephen and Devon. That was some great information there. We do have a few questions that have come in, so I'll just run through those and we'll see if any others come in as well.
Sure.
But to get started, the first was, what type of time commitment or time frame goes into creating a digital twin?
That's a great question, and it's going to depend how deep you want to go into that digital twin. We've seen circumstances where clients decide to want to move into a CMMS platform as an example. And, without any of the data, the assets that you have, there could be time commitment from your internal staff to getting that information into the platform, especially if it's not coming from anywhere that's electronic, and or going out and collecting that data. So there's, there could be a pretty large lead time to actually getting into a system. So you could probably jump into a system pretty quickly to start electronically organizing your data. But ultimately, to become really useful, you need to have that inventorying of assets. And so sometimes it could take up to 90 to 120 days to just implement a system of that nature.
Okay, great. Okay, the next question was, what internal resources are needed to be involved in this process?
Okay, yes, and that's a great question. So as far as your internal resources, it depends on how much you want to keep within your organization and whether how much you have within your organization, or if you want to look for an additional party to help you with that exercise. So, from our standpoint, we often have clients who have facilities managers internally, but they may cover many locations, and it may not be feasible for them to visit every location, collect all of this data, and ultimately put it into the platform. So they hire a third-party company to go to each one, collect this data, and help them get it into the system. But you're going to need basically your facilities management team. You're going to need your staff to understand, what are the objectives of the exercise, and ultimately where are we going to go.
Great. How about the cost associated with keeping the info up to date? What would you be looking at there?
Yeah, so I think that if you look at if you look at a CMMS platform and keeping that information up to date, I think the costs really are just the platform itself. If you implement the right workflows where you have your vendors updating the information as services being done, and you have your own internal team leveraging that platform, then really the cost of keeping it up to date is all within the platform itself, and you're not paying anything extra. When you look at things like IoT monitoring, you're going to need a persistent internet connection at the location. You're going to need Wi-Fi set up so that the device can communicate with the internet. So there are certainly infrastructure costs there that are ongoing monthly, obviously, to keep that connection. And finally, I think with the 3D space, that's probably the largest expense, where you're easily paying for 10 or 15 locations, $500 to $600 a month just to upkeep the environment, to be able to walk through it. And that's one of the challenges, unfortunately, with that newer technology, is that there's a high demand in infrastructure when you're trying to serve those images, and over time it will decrease.
Okay, and we did have another question come in. What kind of integration to Net Facilities would need to be built to automatically generate a work order from your system when there's an anomaly detected with a piece of equipment being monitored virtually? Okay.
So I think as far as integration, it's something that could be built into an API to be able to kick off, a work order within the platform. And so we've seen a couple of examples where we've helped implement something similar, where if information does come in and it says, hey, there's an issue here, it pops up to the end user as an alert. It says we have a circumstance here, and allows them the opportunity to automatically call in for a work order. It's very specific to whichever CMMS platform, and so obviously this question is specific to Net Facilities. But each system, including Net Facilities, has a certain structure set up, and so you have to kind of play within those guardrails in figuring out how to do that. And I'm certain that if there is interest there, that's something obviously that you can inquire, and we could speak at greater depth.
Okay, great. And the data can be stored in most any CMMS system, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. From our experience, for the most part, many of these CMMS platforms have, custom integration, custom fields. So even in some circumstances, there may not be a repository for the condition of an equipment, but a custom field can be set up within that platform, and ultimately then that could be pulled into reports and act just like it was, a standard entry point.
Okay, excellent. So that's the extent of the questions that have come into this point. But I will, just a reminder to all the attendees on that we have recorded today's session, and we will be sending out the recording to everybody that has attended today. If you have questions that come up afterwards, please do not hesitate to reach out to either the folks at Insparisk or us at Net Facilities. We would be happy to answer any additional questions that come up down the road later, or if you'd like some more information on creating a digital twin. So again, I want to thank Stephen and Devon for being here today and hosting the webinar for us. We appreciate all those that attended today and look forward to hopefully doing more of these in the future.
Great. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.